What I thought I'd do in honor of Leroy is when he went into the Packer Hall of Fame, I don't know if you knew this, I presented him.
I did know this.
So I thought I'd just read my presentation speech for Leroy.
Outstanding. I'm listening. See, is it okay now if I just turn into a fan here and listen? Is that all right?
I don't know. You might go, I don't know. It might be way too much about John Anderson. But because, look, it's pretty meaty. So don't put a clock on it, and feel free to turn it off, or we can have it cut down. So, but if you don't mind, since I had this laying around the old house,
that's amazing.
I'd read the Leroy Butler presentation.
Oh, cool. All right, I'll be back here. You go.
All right. So here's the first thing I did say. Boy, I said this would sound so much better if I had Wayne Larravee's voice, because Wayne had introduced me, and I thought, well, that'd be so much, better. That would be great. And then I also said I wanted a teleprompter, and then I said no, I wanted to show people that I had the reading level of a 42-year-old. So this was 17 years ago that I did this.
Crazy.
So here we go. Just to avoid any confusion right off the top, there is a John Anderson, the Packer Hall of Fame, but that's not me. As I get started here, and before I begin bragging on my friend Leroy Butler, I want to congratulate all the other players here tonight being recognized for their contributions to the team last season, and to Hall of Fame inductee Robert Brooks, who, when I worked in Phoenix, once did the Lambeau leap into our assignment desk. That's true. At KPHO, he did that. I also want to thank the Green Bay Packers organization for having me here tonight, Gwen Borga of the Hall of Fame for getting me here tonight. Neither of which would have happened, of course, if Leroy had not asked me here tonight. And for that, I am truly honored, undeserving, I suspect, but honored to be sure. Leroy, this is a once-in-a-lifetime achievement for you, and it's a good thing, because it was hard enough getting people to say something nice about you once. Twice would really be a test. I'm also not so sure I could make up stuff this good a second time. Grand and bold-faced lies of deeds and plays that never really happened, although I held back a few whoppers in case you end up in Canton, Ohio someday, and I believe you will.
And you will.
I thank you for your friendship, for your consistent and continuing example of goodness, and for what you have given this team and this city since 1990, which is far more than football. I feel like that theme still runs through, right?
Mm-hmm.
Man, am I glad we had the good sense to draft you. And I say we because by allowing me to be a small part of this great event, you've also allowed me to come home. I am, and always will be, a Green Bay kid. 1670 Beamert, Vincent T. Lombardi Junior High, Southwest class of 83, season ticket holder, section 104, row 51, seats 35 and 36. Might want to remind everyone, those are paid in full for the 2007 season, and I did it by May 17th. That's before I moved my seats. When I asked the organizers how much time I would have tonight in presenting Leroy, they sent me a videotape of the 2005 program. I watched as Mike Holmgren went almost 15 minutes in presenting Edgar Bennett. Mike lived here 7 years and won a Super Bowl. I lived here for the better part of 20 years, survived the awful 70 and 80s Packers. So by my math, that entitles me to a half an hour. Maybe more, because Leroy graduated ahead of Edgar Bennett at Robert E. Lee High School in Jacksonville. Now, I would never make the mistake in thinking that my status as a local here makes anything about this night about me. My mother and dad are here. They would not agree. However, Leroy, it does allow me to look at and analyze your career with the Packers and your service to the city of Green Bay and the state of Wisconsin with a unique perspective only someone who has spent time in both a bowling alley nursery and Lambeau Field can provide. A view focused and fortified by Kroll's and Al's hamburgers, bratwurst, chili with spaghetti, cheese curds, whole milk, and Miller High Life, the champagne of beers. These insights gleaned and sharpened from sitting on the stadium's cold metal benches, walking through the Hall of Fame itself at every one of its previous locations, and countless football games played on Kennedy's schoolyard and Cater Drive asphalt. And while it is well known nationally, the Packers are community owned, what people don't know, and what I always try to get across to them, is that the uniqueness of the Packers isn't solely ownership, but more so the way we care for and guard and protect our team. The misconception is that Green Bay is a freezing cold place to play, when in fact, there's no place warmer. You know how Leroy got here tonight? He rode my bike. When we see a Packer in a grocery store and start talking to you like you're our neighbor, we're not starstruck. We just want to make sure you're eating right. We don't mean to intrude when you're filling your car with gas. We want to make sure you can get home. We are not trying to be fashion police if we see you in the store. We just want to make sure you're dressed properly for when December comes. Why do I want Brett Favre to make a retirement decision every offseason? Because if he quits, I believe there is a realistic chance he'll get on the tractor and go over and mow my parents' lawn. Besides my parents, I have a few friends here tonight willing to claim me. There's my buddy Stroh, Grandma Audrey, whose real name is Scott Rathlisberger, and Byron. But if you're a Packer, this whole room is filled with your people. And this doesn't happen in other NFL cities. Why does a team in a city of 100,000 people have millions and millions of fans nationwide? Because they would like to be us. They want to experience what we have, except maybe for venison sausage. And that's their loss because they just don't know what they're missing. Whether it's true or not, we feel like the Packers and Leroy Butler and Robert Brooks, Antonio Freeman, Aaron Campen, Darren College, A.J. Hawk, and all those guys play for us. I've said this before. You know who the New York Giants fans think their players play for? The Giants. Same with the Jets or the Cardinals or whatever that team in Minnesota is called. Sure, all NFL players live in a very special world, but to play for the Packers is to have first-class citizenship. Leroy Butler is not only first class, but he is head of the class. We put our arms around him, and he embraced us back. Too often, pro athletes are portrayed as churlish, graceless types who brush aside the autograph seeker, refuse to pose for pictures, and announce annoyingly that all they owe us is a 2-tackle effort or an appearance at a memorabilia show for which they were getting paid $10,000. There are, for sure, a few who fit this unflattering image, those who take the paycheck on Monday and run. Our love and our devotion unrequited. And too often, we take it and move on and love on. The record books sometimes show athletes to be most valuable players. As a fan and a journalist, those letters MVP mean something quite different to me. And this is why it's so great to tell Leroy Butler's story. He's a star athlete who belongs to society at large, a man in good standing with the rest of the community. A man whose self-awareness begins by recognizing there are people around other than himself. He is a man who knows the difference between self-confidence and self-promotion. A man who might very well hold a book signing in your backyard. Leroy Butler, to put it simply, helped reestablish the Packers' greatness and restored the football pride to this city. Yes, Green Bay has always been proud of its team. There's no questioning that, but winning adds to it immensely. We stand taller, walk more confidently because you made us champions again. You brought us a Super Bowl and the trophy with our coach's name on it. Leroy defined his position for more than a decade, and there are 20.5 sacks, 38 interceptions, 889 tackles, and 4 Pro Bowls to prove it. On top of that, he did it with a joy and enthusiasm and genuineness that never made us doubt his smile. Your opponents, however, rarely smiled. Michael Irvin just shakes his head at the mention of your name. Told me at the Super Bowl this year that if the Cowboys hadn't been so successful against the Packers during their formative years, you two might not be friends. Steve Young said you were the only one of 3 safeties he had to worry about because you always thought like a quarterback, and he had to work hard to try and outsmart you or find a play that you didn't know was coming. Darren Woodson and Tim McDonald were the other 2. Steve told me Leroy had a really annoying habit of being in the right place all the time, and an even more annoying habit of making sure the rest of the secondary was in the right place too. He did want you to know, however, that he finally learned not to look you off in coverage just in time to throw a TD pass to Terrell Owens in a playoff game in San Francisco. Then I wrote, I haven't the foggiest idea what that means, but he said you'd remember. Whether it was for celebration or just sheer warmth, you were the first guy with the bright idea to jump in the stands and be among the people after a touchdown. By the way, these days, there are hundreds of thousands of people who claim to have been in the stadium for that game against the Raiders the day after Christmas in 1993. Those of us who sensed you were onto something saved the ticket stub in case we ever called on to prove it. And that's when I actually pulled out the ticket stub and showed it.
You had it? Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. And I have it in a frame right now, so I can't get it. Offense is played with skill and nerve. Defense is about guts and heart. Leroy was all that and committed and loyal too. A leader in every sense of the word. When Brett Favre was asked what made Leroy special as a leader on the great teams of the 90s, he answered what I think is the highest compliment for a team player. His teammates could count on him. We trusted him. Trust. Trust has very little to do with talent. Trust is smart and prepared, and respect and accountability. Leroy's college coach, Florida State Bobby Bowden, trusted him, gave him a scholarship before he was eligible to play at FSU. Coach Bowden couldn't be here tonight, but he sent me an email that read in part, Leroy was the ideal student athlete that you want on your football team. Not only was he a great player, but he was an excellent student and excellent citizen. Never got into trouble, always on time. Never tried to get out of anything. A natural-born leader. He's probably as solid a football player as we've had at Florida State. I thought it was nice of him, Leroy, to leave out how the punterooski you got tackled at the 1-yard line. Did you ever hear this story, Trevor?
Oh, yeah. I think he told it.
Okay. Yeah. If you're not familiar, the Florida State at Clemson game in 1988 produced what ESPN's Beano Cook called the greatest play since My Fair Lady. Seminoles were losing late fourth quarter, fourth down on their own 18, and they call a fake punt. A great sleight of hand and act of deception so convincing the Tigers were completely caught off guard. And old Roy Lee there ran like people were chasing him for 81 yards. Now I'll give you a second to go ahead and add that up. 18 plus 81. Right, that's 99. And if you haven't measured a football field lately, they stretch 100 yards. Our guy got nicked at the 1. Luckily, the kicker made a game-winning field goal for the Noles and bailed him out. So you see, the true miracle that December day against the Raiders was not that Leroy made it into the stands, it's that he actually made it across the goal line. Seriously, that Leroy could run it all is no small miracle, and a blessing most of us are familiar with by now. The leg braces and casts he wore the first 8 years of his childhood that made getting up the steps at his family apartment literally a 12-step program no kid should have to go through. Raised in Jacksonville, Florida's harshest and poorest projects, his family scraped together enough money and his siblings sacrificed enough so 11-year-old Leroy could have the bike on his Christmas list. Lest you think it was a selfish request, also on his list that year was a wish that there would be no violence and that none of his friends or loved ones would get hurt during the holidays. To hear him talk about the excitement and happiness of getting that bike and how it was tempered by the real fear someone might steal it or hurt him to take it from him is to fully appreciate the convoy of bikes traveling from the locker room to Oneida Street's practice field during training camp every summer. And yet none of this produced a mean or bitter adult who hoarded his pro wealth. On the contrary, what grew from that hard place was a compassionate, loving man who shares his good fortune and his experiences with others. A man who gives of his time and of himself. Through his efforts and his foundation, Leroy touches so many in need, and he has done truly special and remarkable things for women with breast cancer, making him not only green and gold, but also pink too. Leroy, on draft day, in your first conversation with then coach Lenny Infante, you had one question. Where is Green Bay? Well, I'll tell you, it is where you were meant to be. A loving husband and father, a good son to his mother, a friend to so many in this room, and one of the all-time great Packers. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege to present to you tonight for the Packer Hall of Fame and forever, number 36, Leroy Butler.